All right, so as I mentioned, this is to talk about Teams Voice. This is a comprehensive training, so we're going to talk about an overview of that desktop application, what that looks like. We'll talk about the dial pad, history, voicemail, speed dial, those things that are kind of available right there on that landing page. And then we'll move into how to manage calls within Teams. We'll talk about how you can initiate calls, some different call control items, which include hold, transfer, call merge, and call park. Then we'll also discuss delegation and answering rules, right? So some of the different customizable features you can set for your answering rules within the calling application within Teams. We'll also talk about how to configure your voicemail. We'll also talk about call queues today. So that's one additional item that wasn't covered during that general training session we're going to discuss today, are call queues and what that experience looks like. And then we'll end our session today with the mobile application. So to get started, we're going to look at that calls landing page within Teams. So to get there, you just click on that little handset icon in the left navigation pane. When you have external dialing enabled, that's when you'll be able to see this dial pad here on your Teams screen. So if you don't see that, it just means you don't have your external dialing enabled quite yet. Down here's my work number, the parked calls button. We'll come back to that later. Down here, there's a few different kind of quick menu items that I can access, and we'll go into a little bit more depth in these here in just a few moments, but this top one is my emergency services location information, and we'll talk about why that's important here in just a moment. A call group that I happen to be in. If I want to switch call forwarding quickly without going into my full settings menu, I can do that from this little quick menu down here. Just click open that drop down and choose a person to forward my calls to. And then this last one down here is the device. So this gets me access to the different devices that I'm using. So if I'm having issues with one, I can quickly switch over to another one without going into the full device settings menu. We'll go over that here in a little bit. The main portion of the page is taken up by my call history. So you can see as I hover over each one of these calls, I have 3 dot ellipses that is available for me. So if you're already not familiar with that, there's 3 dot ellipses everywhere within Teams, our meeting space, our calls, even the Teams area, chats, they're everywhere. So you can use these 3 dot ellipses here in your call history list. And depending on if it's an internal or external call is going to determine what's going to show up in this menu. So for people that are internal, I can call back. I can chat with this person. These are going to be available for internal or external. These don't matter. So I can remove from the history view, add them as a speed dial contact, or just add as a contact. There's also this call button that's highlighted, so you could just click on that to call the person back as well if you didn't want to use that particular feature. Now for our external calls, they're a little bit different. And you might see this kind of Copilot things in here. If you don't see that, that's okay. We've got Copilot here at eGroup Enabling, so that's why you may see that icon here and there. For external calls, you aren't going to be able to chat with them because they're not right there in your organization. You still have all these other options to call back, remove from view, add to speed dial, add as a contact. This is going to be one feature that's a little bit different though. You can block external calls. You cannot block internal calls. I know we all have that one person who calls us all the time, and maybe we wish that we could, but you can't, unfortunately. You can only block those external callers. I rarely get any kind of robocalls or spam calls. Teams does do a great job of filtering those types of calls out. But you know, if you needed to, you could certainly use it for that purpose. Right? And then as soon as I've blocked that, it's blocked at every single time that that call has come in from that number. So a couple of different ways you can manage blocked calls as far as removing that, right? So maybe you determine, you know what, I really do want to receive phone calls from this number. You can come into this list and click unblock. There's another place you can manage that though as well, and that's in your overall settings menu. Just click on that 3 dot ellipses, click on settings, and then it's under the privacy tab. So in here, there's a couple of options. I can just kind of do a blanket of blocking all calls with no caller ID. There may be times when maybe you do need to receive those types of calls, and you can block calls pretty quickly and easily, either from that call list if you want to, or here in this area as well. So I just leave that unchecked and disabled, right? Because if I do get those calls come through and it happens to be a spam call or somebody that I don't want to call any longer, I can always block that call in that individual area. If you determine that you want to unblock a call, you'll see in here are the numbers that I have blocked. So if I didn't want to manage it from my call history list area and go back and try and find that call, maybe it's been a while since I've gotten that number, I can come in here and unblock this. So now when I go back into my calls history page, that little blocked message has disappeared. It's no longer visible. You can also kind of further customize your call history list by clicking on these different tabs to view different types of calls. We'll come back to voicemail here in a little bit, but nice to be able to kind of, filter that down in case you need to view, okay, what were my missed calls? So you can kind of get back to those people quickly if you need to, and view them in that fashion. On the right here are my speed dial contacts. So these are people that I call most frequently. I can just hover over their names and I can do a video call or an audio call. This drop down gives me different phone number options. If they were external contacts, I wouldn't be able to do a video call. And then here's another 3-dot ellipses. Like I said, they're everywhere. I can remove this person from speed dial with this, or I can just delete this contact altogether. So we've talked about a couple of different ways you can initiate phone calls. Let's go into a few more. One of them is if you are in a chat message with somebody, you can elevate that to a call by clicking on that audio call. You can click on the drop down for some other options. So I could do a video call or call one of these other numbers. You can also use this dial pad here and click on the individual numbers. You can enter numbers off of your keyboard's number pad to get numbers in that way. You can also just copy and paste out of some other areas. So an email, a chat, you can copy and paste them into this field. But I find the easiest way is to search by name. And this will bring up not only people within your organization, but anybody that's in your contact list as well. So if you've saved some contacts to your contact list and they're outside of CSU, you'll be able to find them in this list as long as you've added them in. And then once you find the person's name that you want to go ahead and call, you just click that person in that field and then click on that call button to go ahead and initiate that call. So now let's go back down to some of these other options down here in the lower left. So our emergency services location information. Why is this important? Well, if you ever call 911 through Teams, you need to make sure that this information is showing your accurate location. Most people might just go ahead and reach for their cell phone. I know that I would. That's what I use most of the time to make calls. So, but in the instance that you don't, just make sure this information is accurate. When you connect to the network, it's going to pull in that information, right? So depending on how accurate that connection has that address listed will determine what's going to show up. So it may narrow it down to a specific floor, a specific office number. Fantastic, right? Just make sure that's correct. And anytime you change locations, maybe you work in a different office for the day, or you're working from a coffee shop, or you're working from home, you just want to make sure that this is correct. So the first step is to just come in here, click this reset button. This is going to show this address, which is not my current address, but for our purposes, I want to show you how you can edit that. So I clicked that reset button. Now I can come back in here and I have a couple options. I can verify this address or I can edit it. So in here's where I can go ahead and make any updates to that. If I need to add in a floor number or apartment or unit or suite number, I can do that. You can also enter this address manually. And then that will provide you that space to go ahead and just type in what your correct address is. Again, you can always add your floor or apartment or suite number in this space, and then you can click confirm. You can also do a help find my address if it still isn't maybe, if you would prefer to have a kind of autofill in there, but I find that sometimes it's just as easy to enter that address manually. Then I click confirm, and now it's updated that here. So for the call forwarding, we're going to come back to that when we go into our call answering rules a little bit later on in our session today, but I do want to speak about this device setting. So like I mentioned, you can come in here and change this if it's not working properly. If you want to check your full device settings, all you have to do is click on that device settings, and it's going to take you to that devices tab in your settings menu. You can also get to the same space if you were to click on this three-dot ellipses and go to settings. It's going to bring up this same exact screen. So you notice there wasn't a change. I'm already in this, but it's just another way you can navigate to this particular menu. So this is going to show which speaker you're using, the microphone you're using. You can adjust the sensitivity. If you've hooked up a new device and you want to make a test phone call without maybe bothering anyone or calling your own cell phone, you can make a test call in here. You can also customize your noise suppression level. So if you're working in an office location with a lot of background noise, you might want to filter that out. So you can go ahead and have that set to high. There are a couple of other options. So if you're, sharing some kind of external sound, you might want to set that to low or off so that people can hear that sound coming through. And you've got high fidelity music mode, spatial audio, and then this secondary ringer. So this is great if you wear a headset typically to take your calls, but there may be times during your day when you need to step away from your desk. You might still be close enough to where you could, hear a ring, but you're not wearing your headset. So how is that sound going to come through? Make sure that you set up a secondary ringer, and this could be your laptop, it could be some other speaker. That way, when you're not wearing your headset and you're not looking at your computer, you can go ahead and still hear that ring come through for those calls. And then in here, because this is for your overall device settings, this also has the camera options. So you can come in here and make adjustments on brightness, soft focus. I don't know how much it really does make a difference on the focus, but it's nice to be able to go ahead and see that before you get started with a video call. So back in our calls page, as I mentioned, you can have these speed dial contacts, and I talked about external contacts, and you can find them in your list. Well, how do we add those in? You can click on this view contacts. Otherwise, there's also like a people option, right? You can pin this if you need to. If you always want to be able to have your contact list visible, if you right click on it once it's up, you can select to go ahead and pin it to your navigation bar. So it will just be here right there, easily found without having to go in and click in the add contacts or search through the app. So in here are all my contacts. Not a very long list. I don't do a very good job of adding in a bunch of contacts, but you may have an opposite kind of experience, right? You might rely on this a lot. You might have some contacts from Outlook that you want to make sure that you have in here, and you can access them here in Teams easily to go ahead and call them. This is kind of like your own personal little phone book. So not only can you get your contacts in here by adding them in, right? I can go ahead and just click on add contact, start typing the name of the person I want to add in. And now I've added this person in. I'm going to just go ahead and click save. And now I've got my contact saved. You can also make favorites. So you can see I've got some stars over here on some of these. They're people that I contact frequently. So if I need to kind of narrow that list down, I can just click on favorites. And then I can find all those people that I contact. If they're maybe not quite as frequent as a speed dial contact, I can just go ahead and put them into that particular category. Speaking of categories, how do we get those added? You can see there's categories listed here on the side that I've created. So to create a new category, you get started by just hovering over any of your contacts. And again, here's our three-dot ellipses, right, that are everywhere. And then you're going to click on that three-dot ellipses. And this is what will give you some additional options. For your external contacts, you can edit their information, right? Because they may change organizations, they might change departments, they might have, you know, a different phone number that you need to pull in for them. There's nowhere for this information to pull from for your external contacts like it can for your internal contacts. So that's why you can go ahead and edit in here where you're maybe not able to do that with your internal contacts. If they have them as a favorite, I can remove them from here. I could add them as a speed dial. I could place an audio call. If for my internal contacts, I can do the chat and the email function as well, or I could delete them as a contact. Now, if I want to create a brand new category, I can go ahead and click on this add category and then go ahead and create a brand new name, right, for that brand new category. Now, nobody is going to know that you are favoriting them. So there's not going to be any hurt feelings if someone's a favorite on your contacts list. They're not going to know. It's also nice to add in these different categories because then you can, you know, filter that way. So who are all my people for these different categories? And I can quickly find them that way, just like you can filter them with your favorites. So the next item we're going to talk about are our voicemails. So you can manage your voicemails in Teams or Outlook. They're going to be visible in both places. So in Teams, when I hover over my voicemails, just like in that whole history list area, there's still a three-dot ellipses. I can just go ahead and click call to call that number back. Or I can click on this three-dot ellipses. I have some other options in here. Call back, I can mark this as unread. I can delete, add a speed dial, add a contact, or block because it's an external call. So marking it as unread, you know, maybe I accidentally clicked on it, right? And I really didn't have time to read the transcript or listen to the actual message. This kind of visually alerts me that I need to come back to this call. So to open this, I can just click on that call and it will bring up all this information over here on the right-hand side. It's going to show the phone number, give me the option to call back. Now it's an external call, so these other options are grayed out. I can chat, I can video call, and I can see where that person is at within my organization with this one. Then it shows the transcript. Just click show more to go ahead and open that up. And then I can play that voicemail and I can change the speed at which I've listened to that voicemail. So, you know, maybe I read that transcription. It doesn't really look quite accurate. I can say, okay, maybe it just didn't capture it because the person is talking really fast. I can slow that down and listen to it and then make sure that I've captured that information correctly. In Outlook, you've got a lot of the same things available to you. So I can see the date, the time the call was made. I can listen to that recording. This is just going to open up a media player. You don't have to download or install anything. Just click that open and click the play button to hear it. I've got my transcript of the voicemail message. I can see the phone number that it came from. So just really it's up to you on how you want to manage your personal emails and kind of what your preference is. So next, we're going to go into our call control. So these are features that you'll manage during kind of that live call that I can't show. Again, I do have a kind of a short video, but want to talk about a couple of these before we watch that. When you have an internal call versus an external call, they're going to look a little bit different in the features that you have available. It's because for internal calls, you know, you can have video calls, right? So not only do you have this camera feature, but you've got that view, you've got effects maybe that you can use, you know, different backgrounds and things you want to add into that. And then you've got that chat feature because they're an internal contact. For your external callers, a little bit less, right? You have no video or chat capabilities, but the main call management items, the style pad, hold transfer, you may not see this because that is not currently enabled. for that record and transcribe, but the parking a call, your call settings, those are all still going to be available, whether that is an internal or external call. So if you're ever having any kinds of issues with your call, you want to make sure that you check your device settings. So in that call space, just like here in our meeting area, I've got a drop down, and this is going to show me the device settings for my camera. And then if I click on the microphone, it's going to show me the device settings for my audio. So if I'm talking and there's no purple lines here, I know my microphone's not working, right? So I need to switch out that device. I can also enable my background noise suppression in here, spatial audio if I wanted to do that, and then I could click this open for more audio settings. But this main purpose is, if something's not working right, you can come in here and switch it right there within that call space. Now, if you've checked all of those things and everything looks the way it should, but you're still having some issues, the next thing you'll want to do is to check the call health. And we have a feature very much like that here in our meeting space. So I'm going to show you right in here. If I click on the settings, which you've got available in your drop-down menu for your calls, you're going to come in here and click on call health. Now, what is important is not that you necessarily know what these things should be or what they need to look like, but that you capture all of this information. So you're going to come into each of these, click that open, take a screen clipping of this. If you are super curious, you can hover over these and kind of find out what each of those relate to. But again, not important that you know, more important that you go in and collect all this information to provide to IT so that they can troubleshoot and resolve your issues for you. So for the hold feature, you're just going to click on that hold button from that control bar, and then there's going to be a timer that will appear under that person's icon or profile picture, and it will let you know like how long has that call been on hold. It's great in case you happen to take longer than you anticipated to get some information for that person, and you can say, oh gosh, I need to check back in with them. You can just click on that resume button and say, hey, I'm still working on this for you. Can you continue to hold? Great, thanks. And then put them back on hold. You can also use this call merge feature to create a conference call if you have two calls that are happening. So if you have one call that's on hold, it could even be 3 calls on hold if you want to be more realistic, maybe. And then you have one active call. You can combine some of those calls into a conference call and use that merge call functionality. So we're going to be in our active call. You can only have one call active at a time in Teams. We'll be in that active call, click on that 3 more options menu, and then we would click on merge calls. And then it would pop up with this list of a call that we want to merge with. So in this example, there was only one call, but you might have a couple of other calls on hold. You select whichever call you want to join and then click merge. And then that will become a conference call. When it comes to transferring a call, there's a couple of different transfer options. The first one we're going to talk about is a blind or cold transfer, where you're just dropping that call off to another person. So there's not any, talking, no consultation, no giving that other person information. You just really want to go ahead and drop that call off to that other line. So you're going to click on transfer, select transfer. And from there, you can begin typing the name or the number of the person you want to transfer that call to. So if it's an internal call, you may have this option here that says ring back if there's no answer. If you toggle that switch on, this will be grayed out. It's not going to give you options to transfer to a work voicemail or a different number when you click on this little drop down arrow here next to transfer. So if you select this ring back if there's no answer, you go ahead and transfer that call. That person doesn't answer, you'll see something very similar to this pop back up. So you're going to know that it was that call coming back to you. It's not going to look like it's just a brand new call coming in. And then if you don't select that ring back, if there's no answer, again, you've got this transfer drop down and you can choose what you want to transfer that to. Maybe you know that person's out for the day, but there's really nobody else that can take that type of call. You just want to transfer it right to their voicemail so that when they do get back in the office, they can go ahead and call back that person to assist them. Then there's the option for that warm or consultative transfer. So it basically starts with the same process. We're going to click on that transfer button. Then we would select consult and transfer. Again, we're going to get that pop-up window, right, of who we want to transfer that call to. We also have some options. We can use chat within that area. So if we don't necessarily want to talk to that person, you can just initiate a chat first to do that consultation before transferring that call over to them. Or you can select a number to go ahead and call as well. This just shows some of those different views of that call when it's being transferred. So you can see here's what Haley sees when that call is being transferred to Brad. And I would see this, that I'm getting transferred to Brad. And then Brad would see that he's getting a call transferred by Haley and it's me that's calling. So it's pretty easy to see kind of what's happening visually in that call scenario. Now, as I mentioned just a couple moments ago, you can only have one call active at a time in Teams. Well, that's great. I frequently have multiple calls coming at the same time that I have to handle. You can still do that within Teams. You just can only be talking to one person or set of persons in one call window. So basically, you have to keep that in mind, that only one call window can be active. You can have multiple people in there if you merge calls or you add people to that call. But just one call can be active at a time, and then all the other calls will be visible in their own individual call window space. So it's going to be like it's opening up another tab. So for this example here, we have one call that's on hold. We're currently on this call with Brad, and we have a third incoming call. So if I need to answer this call, I can ask Brad, hey, is it okay if I place you on a brief hold? Yep, no problem. All I have to do is click this purple handset button. When I click this, it's automatically going to place Brad on hold, and this will become my active call. So it's great because you don't have to click on this hold button and then click on that call to answer it. Just answering this call places this call on hold. And then if I need to toggle between calls, all I have to do is click the resume button, and then that will become my active call. It will place my other call on hold. So in this same example, let's say that, you know what, I can't really take this call right now. Maybe you can see who it is coming through and you know, like, I'll just call them back later. I'm going to go ahead and decline this call because this call with Brad is more important. If you click this red handset button to hang up that call, they're not going to know that you declined it. It's going to follow whatever rules you have set for your unanswered call settings. And we'll go through that in a little while, and I'll kind of remind you of this scenario here. So if I have my phone set to ring 5 times and go to voicemail, I might only hear this call ring once, right? And then I click that handset button. This caller will hear 5 rings and then they're going to go to my voicemail. So they're not going to feel sad or angry because I've declined their call. They're not going to know. So next feature we're going to talk about is call park. This is really handy. And there's a couple different reasons why you might want to utilize call park. Maybe you receive a call and you're not really sure who needs to be receiving that call, right, for a transfer. Like maybe that normal person that takes this call type is out of the office for the day. So you might have a group chat, or you could maybe do some asking around. Instead of just putting that call on hold, you could put that call in park, and then you're going to get a code that will be provided to you. So you can copy that code, you can drop that code into that chat, and then say, all right, hey, whoever is available to pick up this call, since Sue isn't in the office today, it's parked and the code is 10 to go ahead and retrieve it. And then back in their call space, they're going to click on this parked calls, and then that's where they would enter this code, right? So they'd enter that code 10, click pick up, and they'd be able to go ahead and pick up that parked call. It's also handy if you have the Teams mobile app and you've either answered that call on your desktop and you need to be on the go, so you need to transfer it over to your mobile device, or vice versa. Maybe you've taken a call on your mobile device and now you're at your desk, you're in your office, you want to go ahead and transfer it over to your desktop. You can go ahead and park that call on your desktop application and then retrieve it on your mobile device by tapping on calls, and then there's a little handset button with a P. You tap on that and enter the code in that space. And then same thing, and on your mobile device, you can park that call. There's a 3-dot more options menu in there. Park the call, you get the code, enter it on your desktop when you get to it. When that other person picks up the parked call, so if this is that case where you weren't sure who needs to receive it, and so you just drop the code in, once they enter that code and click pick up, they'll have that little notification in the banner that that's the call from the parked call, so they'll know. You can also see that in your call history listing. So when that call is still active and you've parked it, you can copy the code from that area as well. Let's talk about call delegates. So a couple things to think about before you create a delegate and add people as delegates. What is your reason for doing that, right? So having someone be your delegate is maybe something that you want to have be for a little bit more long term. If you're going to be out for a week or longer, you might want to have someone be able to make and receive calls on your behalf. If it's just going to be an instance where maybe you're, leaving the office for a couple of hours, you might want to use call forwarding for that purpose instead. So again, just really be intentional about why you're choosing to set someone up as a delegate, and when you determine that you want to go ahead and forward your calls to them, and the kinds of permissions you want to provide that person as well. So we're going to go ahead and bring up my Teams up here again. And I'm a delegate for Haley, so that's why she's showing in here. So as Haley's delegate, I can see calls. I can type in my numbers here and call as Haley. Even on this page, if I enter numbers in this space, I can choose to call as Haley or myself from here. So you don't necessarily have to be in your delegate tab to make calls on behalf of that other person if they've given you that permission. So where am I going to manage these delegates at? So you're going to come to your settings menu. And then calls, and we'll come back up to these other call items later. And then here's where you can go ahead and manage delegates. So I'm going to click edit. And here are my current delegates. If I want to add another person in as my delegate, what happens when I add that person in is they are going to get a chat message, and it's going to say, you've been added as Stephanie's delegate, and here's the permissions that you have. So I'm just going to go ahead and click on Brad here as an example. So when I set Brad up as my delegate, I didn't want to give him all encompassing power for my delegate settings. And I didn't need him maybe to pick up held calls or join active calls, right? Especially if this is for me being out of the office for a week or two. I just really want Brad to make and receive calls on my behalf. So I just set those two permissions. And then what Brad sees is this. I added him as a delegate. He can make calls. And then anytime you change their permissions, they'll also get a chat message. So maybe when I initially add Brad in, I wanted him to have all these other powers and abilities, and I no longer want that. So I kind of limited what I wanted him to do within my within my delegate settings. You can always go back and change that, right? It's just going to prompt a chat message to that person, so kind of be mindful of that. So I'm going to come back in here. Sorry, I just kind of saw the chat messages. Yeah, Carrie, I tried. It wasn't doing the share audio option for me. So I'll hopefully be able to see if I can resolve that by the time our mobile one comes up. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. So I'm going to go ahead and change one of these. And maybe I don't want to give him that ability. I'm going to have him pick up calls and join active, right? So now when I come back into my chat here, now he can see those other permissions that I've granted. So again, think of the purpose of forwarding your calls to someone, how long of a period it's going to be, might kind of help you determine, do I really want to make somebody my delegate, or do I just want to forward calls to them? And what does that look like? And in here, because Haley's given me permission, oh, she took it away. So she must have removed me as a delegate after I've already started this. So if I'd had the ability to change for settings, I would see the delegate settings in here. So I'm going to show what that looks like quickly on here. So you're going to see that you're managing that person's call group, their delegates, all those different settings. You're clicking into that person, so you are intentionally going into their settings. So you're going to know that it's not your own personal settings. Those are located under this personal tab here. So these are these call answering rules. So earlier when I talked about the declined calls and how you have your unanswered calls. So this is, when you can't answer a call, how do you want that to be handled? How many seconds? That's where you set that. So when I said 5 rings and it goes to voicemail, that's how I've got this set. 20 seconds is about 5 rings on the call. You can click on this drop down and choose other options. 20 seconds just happens to be that default. And then, what do you want to happen when you can't answer that call? I do want it to go to my voicemail if I can't answer it. Or you could choose that to go to your delegates or a new number or a specific contact if you prefer. You can also choose what happens when that call rings to you. So do you want that to ring to you as well as another person? Do you want that to also ring your delegates so that, in case you can't answer that call, maybe one of your delegates can go ahead and receive that phone call on your behalf? You can just kind of choose in that drop down. For here, if I toggle this switch to forward all my calls, now I can choose how my calls are going to be forwarded. Maybe I want them to go to voicemail, a new number or contact, or to my delegates. You can also add this call group in here for those other contacts. You just click on add call group, and then in here's where you start typing the names of the people you want to add to your call group. So you notice there's kind of this ring and it shows everyone at once. If you click on that drop down, there's a couple of other options, right? I can have it go in the order below or ring order. So I want this ring order to be in the order below. So if I have this set as my call forwarding group, Brad's going to be the first one to receive it. If Brad doesn't answer, then it goes to Val. It's important that if you are using this specific type of ring order, that you keep this group pretty small, right? Because if that person has tried to call you, now they're going to another person and then another person and then another person, they're probably going to hang up at some point because they're going to get tired of getting transferred. If you choose this to, everyone at once, then it really doesn't matter. Add 10, 15, 20 people to it. Whoever is able to answer that call first, they just pick it up and they're the ones who answer it. So again, most important thing, depending on your ring order, determines how many people you want to add to that. Now, if you do have this set to, ring in the specific order and you say, oh, whoops, you know what, Val was supposed to be first, you can just delete and then add them in to get them in the correct order. So I'm going to go back out here into our calls menu. So the other thing that's great is you can select different ringtones for different types of calls so that you'll know just by hearing that ring that it's a different call type, right? So I'll know if this is just a forwarded call or if it's a call that I'm receiving as someone's delegate, so that I can say, oh, you know what, they were trying to reach somebody else, or so-and-so is not able to answer their phone right now, so I better go ahead and pick this up and help them out. And you can drop down the list and hover over each one. It'll play a little preview so that you can choose whichever ringtone you find the most appealing. And then one of my favorite features, I do like the call park feature. That's really great. But this is definitely one of my favorites. It's your voicemail and how you can really customize this. If you like to be kind of traditional, recorded greeting, you can absolutely do that. You can click on that recorded greeting and go ahead and record your message. There's also a text-to-speech customized greeting option. So you're going to choose your language, you're going to type your message in here. And then if I type on this, it opens up my out of office voicemail. So I can type in a separate greeting for out of office, and then I can choose when I want that out of office greeting to play. So I want that to just go ahead and automatically play when I have auto replies on in Outlook, or when I have an out of office calendar event. And your calendar will sync between Outlook and Teams, so it doesn't matter if you create that out of office in your Teams calendar or Outlook, doesn't matter. As long as you have an out of office calendar event, if you mark that box, it will go ahead and play your out of office greeting. You don't have to go back in and change your voicemail greeting before you leave, and then change it back when you get back in the office. It does it automatically, and I love that. The other item you can customize in here is how you want that call to be handled when it is directed to that voicemail. So if people are actually taking the time to get to my voicemail, I want them to go ahead and leave a message, but there are lots of other options. You can have that call transfer to someone else, or if you're really going to be out for an extended period of time, you can just, maybe play the greeting and have that call end. Again, you kind of can make this your way, not to sound like national burger chain restaurant, but you can have it your way and really kind of make this your own personalized experience here. And I love that. The delegates, again, we mentioned here, the call groups. Here's another area for that emergency services location information where you can edit that. So if you didn't want to edit that in your landing page and calls, you can go ahead and do that here in this area and go ahead and reset that. So I'm going to go through just a couple of items here on these slides before we go into talking about the mobile app. When you are making and receiving calls as a delegate, I kind of showed you in our list of how you can go ahead and do that. That person is going to see, if they're a Teams user, they're going to be able to see that Haley is the one who's calling. She's calling on behalf of Brad. So she's knowing that even though whoever is answering this, knows that Haley is the one that's I'm going to talk to, but it's Brad she's calling on behalf of. Same thing with forwarded calls. They're going to be able to see that right there in the banner. So very nice to have that. I already went through a lot of these different rules, the voicemail. So now we're getting to the call queues and shared lines. And I don't have a good way to kind of show you what this looks like. Unfortunately, same thing with the live call features. As soon as I would start that, it would just put our meeting on hold. But you can see which calls are coming in for your call queue. It'll show right there in the banner. You'll be able to see this call came in through the queue. This is not a personal call that's coming directly for you. It's coming through this call queue line. So how do we get into our call queue? Great question. Let me go ahead and pull up our Teams menu. So in here is a call queue, right? So I'm in my calls tab. I have my personal call settings, delegate call settings, which got revoked earlier today, apparently. And then I've got my call queue. I just toggle this switch. Now I'll be out of the queue. It's break time, it's end of my shift. I will no longer receive calls. It will take a little while for others to see that you're not in the queue. So if you need to kind of like let anybody know, hey, I'm logging out of the queue, you can go ahead and maybe send a quick chat message to let them know. And then you just toggle that switch on, and I'll be able to go ahead and receive calls for that queue. And then in your call history area, you'll be able to see that it was a call for that queue and it was not a direct call to your line. It will kind of show this call queue name that has been applied to that queue. Then the other item to talk about around call queues is how are you going to manage those voicemails, right? So when voicemails come through, they are going to go to your Outlook. In your Outlook, you're going to be able to see it just like the voicemail example that I showed you with my own personal folder. But what will be a little bit different is that it's going to show up in your groups area, and it would be under the phone number for that particular queue. So in here, my groups, are not tied to a call queue, but for yours, you would come in here to this group area, and that's where you would see those different voicemail messages. Now, how those are going to be handled, whether it's kind of one person is managing the voicemail for the day or one person manages them for the week. Just make sure that everybody is aware of whatever that process is going to look like to manage those voicemails. Just like in the personal one, it's going to have all that same information available. It's just that you're going to access it through groups, and you're going to click into that number for that queue to access those emails that have your voicemails in them. Next, we've got the mobile app to talk about. So if you want to get started with the mobile app, you can search either in Google Play or the App Store and look for it that way. The other option you have is to go from your Teams settings menu and then click on this download the mobile app. It's going to provide you that QR code that you can go ahead and access from your smartphone with that camera to go ahead and get that loaded onto your device. Now you'll just have to make sure that you sign in with your credentials for CSU to go ahead and get signed in and get started. Now, while it's really nice to be able to take Teams on the go, you can, manage chats that way. You can take phone calls with you on the go. You still want to make sure that you kind of keep that work-life balance in mind, right? So you'll want to make sure that you schedule quiet time because you don't want to be bothered at all hours of the day. You need to make sure that you make some adjustments so that you're not getting all these different notifications coming through and calls coming through. So you can set your status to do not disturb. That will prevent calls from coming through. So that's a quick way to do it. But if you don't want to be doing that continuously every single day, every time you're done, a more permanent way to do that is to come into your settings app on your mobile device. So that's going to be started by tapping on your profile picture or icon or initials that are going to be in there. Tap on notifications and then tap on during quiet time. Then in here is where you're going to set your hours, when you want your quiet time to start, when you want that to end, and then on what days. If you want that to be for a full 24 hours, you toggle this switch on and you select whichever 2 days you want to have totally quiet for a full 24 hours. And then you can even change this a little bit further and customize it by switching this to certain items, right? Like what do you want to have as an exception to those quiet hours? If you truly don't want any calls to be coming in, then you want to make sure that this switch is toggled off. Maybe you want important messages to come through, and these are like important urgent messages through chat. They're not, someone saying that it's an urgent message on a voicemail. This is through the chat functionality in Teams. Same thing with these mentions, right? It's an at mention within the team space you'd be getting these notifications for. For the iPhone, it looks just a little bit different. you're still accessing it by tapping on the initials or profile picture icon, tapping notifications, and here we'll go to general activity, and then you'll use these toggle switches to determine, when you want those items to be silenced. The other thing you have access to within that call space are your settings. So a lot of the items that are available within the desktop, you have access to in the mobile app as well. So it's not like, oh, I'm on mobile, I'm not able to change my settings or block any numbers or manage my delegates. That is definitely not the case. You can do that here within your Teams mobile app. So you start by tapping on your profile picture or initials icon, tap on settings, and then tap on calling to get to those call settings. And then you'll have that menu where you can go ahead and choose all those different settings. Then for calling, you can still, have access to your speed dial contacts, your shared lines, people that you're a delegate for. You can search by name by tapping on people, or you can use this little phone plus that will open this up for it'll take you right to the dial pad first, then you have to tap on people to search by name. But in here you can enter a phone number. If you do want to import some contacts from your mobile device, you tap on that little pound sign there to access that. You tap on that little tape recorder, and that will take you to your voicemail. So again, all those features on your desktop you have available in the mobile app at your fingertips as well, including call park. Remember, we talked about this a little bit earlier, how it's great to be able to take your calls on the go or switch them from your mobile device to your desktop application. So when you're in that mobile app, you've got a 3-dot more options menu when you're in that active call. And then you can go ahead and tap on park call, and then you can get that code. You could still use this to drop in a chat to someone on your mobile device, right? So if you're saying, you know what, I'm not at my desk right now, so-and-so might be able to handle this question for a little bit better, or let me find out who can answer this question better. You can go ahead and park the call, copy that code, and still access your chat by tapping on the chat icon, and then drop that in there for someone else to answer. So retrieving that parked call on your mobile app, you'd be getting into that dial pad area. There's a little handset with the P on there, or the phone P icon, as I sometimes call it. And then you can put your code in there to go ahead and retrieve that parked call. Next, we have the device transfer. So this is great if you are needing to take your meeting on the go. So if you're in a Teams meeting and you need to go ahead and be mobile, you can access that by tapping on the calendar icon in your Teams mobile app. And then you'll see a little banner appear. It might say, go ahead and join. You can choose then, do I want to add that device or do I want to transfer to that device? If you truly want to be on the go, then you want to select that transfer on the device, transfer to this device, because then that will take you out of the meeting and the desktop, and then that will place you in the meeting only on your mobile device. Maybe you're having some audio issues, or for whatever reason you want to go ahead and join with your phone as well. You just select add, and then you'd be in that meeting both on your mobile device as well as the desktop.